large-scale battle in Shanghai. On the Chinese side, to deal with the new situation, on August 29, 1937, the Military Council established 5 combat theatres, which included all the provinces then facing the enemy aggression. These 5 combat theatres were: First Combat Theatre includes Hebei and Northern Henan area, Commanding Officer General Chen Chien. Second Combat Theatre includes Shanxi, Chaha-er and Xi'an, Commanding Officer General Yan Si-san. Third Combat Theatre includes Jiangsu and Zhejiang, Commanding Officer Feng Yuxiang. Fourth Combat Theatre includes Fujian and Guangdong, Commanding Officer General He Yinqing. The Fifth Combat Theatre includes Shandong and Huaibei, Commanding Officer General Li Chungzhen. Shanghai was in the Third Combat Theatre and was facing a great number of enemy forces arriving from the sea. General Chen Cheng was appointed as the commander who would defend and fight off the Japanese landing forces. Now let us examine the map to understand the Japanese movement. In late August 1937, Japanese reinforcements landed along the line of Wusong-ko to Liu-ho-ko. After the Japanese force established their beachhead here, they could use their motorised force to take the advantages of the broad, flat dune plain to push further inland and to surround Shanghai. After they completed the encirclement, the Battle of Shanghai was over. So General Chen Cheng understood the situation. So he would deploy his limited and poorly equipped troops to stop the Japanese advance from their beachhead. At this stage, the Battle of Shanghai entered the second stage, and it suffered the highest casualties of any anti-landing warfare in history. At this time, more Chinese reinforcements arrived to join the battle. They were the 6th Division, led by General Zhou Yan, the 11th Division, led by General Pang San, the 14th Division, led by General Huo Guisang, and the 67th Division, led by General Li Su-feng. Because of the arrival of reinforcements on both sides, the Battle of Shanghai was scaled up. As the Japanese force was almost unstoppable on this vast flat area, it was very difficult for the Chinese troops to hold their ground. The Chinese troops only had their rifles in their hands and no other equipment, but they had the fearless willingness to battle the Japanese army.
我们都到了海边了，都已是那个西圈那个阳线的部队，有一些张法快的部队，我们的当中，那时候我们从日本快下那个当罗天的呢，那个大炮啊，都杀往刀样的。
With the cover of Japanese Navy gunfire, the Japanese quickly established their beachhead and began to push inland. Therefore, the towns like Yepu, Luodian, and Wusong and Baoshan were all engulfed in flames. On August 22, 1937, Yepu and Shiziling fell into Japanese hands. But the 583rd Regiment of 98th Division, led by General Xia Suzong, counterattacked and reoccupied the lost ground on August 26. Therefore, the 98th Division ordered the 583rd Regiment to hold Yepu and ordered the 2nd Battalion of 588th Regiment to hold Shiziling. This battalion was attacked by the Japanese on August 31. After a day and night of battle, the 5th and 6th Companies suffered heavy casualties and lost communication with the 4th Company. Thus, Shiziling fell into Japanese hands again on September 1st. But the 583rd Regiment held Yepu until September 10. The Japanese kept on attacking again. The main position changed hands several times, and it was recaptured again by the counterattack of the Chinese army.
4点钟开始攻击，在那会儿攻击的时候，不是说还有什么三民行啦，又是什么三民群呢？那就是跟这个一路的就是嗷嗷要就上去了。在这个沿途当中，人家这个日本人的这个炮啊，等着飞机啊，哎呀，那个伤亡很惨重。我们营长姓蒋啊，蒋文才啊，那第一个就牺牲了。
On August 24, Luodian was lost too, but the 11th Division took it back on the same day. The former commander of the 11th Division, General Pen Sang, remembers.
张之洞啊，他说：“委员长的命令，要你今天 把螺钿拿下来。我说好了，我去，哎，我是奉委员长的命令，要去开赴螺钿。下午6点钟前嘛，就把螺钿开赴了。
Another story regarding the 6th Division led by General Zhou Yan. His division arrived in Shanghai on August 22. Immediately they joined and reinforced with the local police security force commanded by General Ji Zhangjian. This security force had one regiment commanded by young Bo Fei, and they were stationed at the Wushan district. In the next 10 days, General Zhou Yan and his 6th Division held the position under heavy enemy fire. The battle was so intense that at the end of the 10th day, the 6th Division had less than 200 men alive. Thus they had to retreat from the battleground and move to Jiading for regrouping. But it was much worse for a company of police security forces who held the old gun position north of Wushan. They held the position for 2 more days than the 6th Division. Their position fell on September 2, by which time this company had no survivors. The battle for Baoshan County was even more severe.
包山呐哈，到黑了，所有的炮啊哈，飞机啊，都炸在那个山了。不但说是你，看那个山完全都是火光啊，好像这个烧房子一样，那个烟雾沉沉的，就也看不到一个人了。
The Japanese army began to attack Baoshan County on September 3, but was repelled by Chinese troops. On September 5, the Japanese attacked Baoshan again in 3 directions. And on September 7, the Japanese broke the Baoshan defence line. The battalion commander, Yao Zuqing, had only about 20 men left under his command. He led these men in a bayonet charge against the enemy until all of them were killed. On the Luodian front, the troops under General Lao Choring were having difficulty retaking Luodian. Although the 3rd Battalion of the 79th Regiment of 14th Division had once entered Luodian and killed the Japanese brigade commander, General Saimimi, Luodian was still held by the Japanese. Finally, Luodian fell. General Peng San remembers.
那螺钿那点小地方，我在那个地方居住仅仅43天。
Under continuous pressure from Japanese reinforcements, General Chen Cheng decided to change strategy. He ordered the Chinese troops to hold their positions rather than attack in order to reduce the casualties on our side. This decision was made on September 10, from which point the Battle of Shanghai went into a different phase, from the attacking and intercepting modes into the defensive mode. In late October 1937, the Battle of Shanghai continued for 70 days. For the past 2 months, the battle was the most cruel slaughter in war ever seen before in human history. The commander of the 3rd Combat Theatre, General Feng Yuxiang, wrote in his memoirs, he described the Battle of Shanghai. Our troops were brought into the battle 1 division every day. Some of them lost half their strength in less than 3 hours. Some stood for 5 hours and lost 2/3 of their men. The battle was like a giant mixing pot. Once fallen into, you disappeared. It may be hard for the reader to comprehend and fully realise the true story. In this battle, the Chinese army dispatched more than 700,000 troops.
一天要消耗1个师啊！我们装备不如他。长江口，他4艘航空母舰，黄浦江同长江有100多条兵舰，这么打。
我们那个这个一个连轻机关枪只有3条轻机关枪，就是打它会卡弹。
我们还是怎么呢？买锅造饭，行军锅在那里造饭，烧得满天烟火冲天，报告敌人我在这里啊，你来啊！我们很多的部队啊，没有跟敌人见面就垮了，就是这样炸了，就给他的炮兵。给他的飞机来炸了。
我们只有携带的这个武器、弹药，打完了后面补充不来。
各省的军队呢，只有步枪啊，2条腿1支枪啊，我们4个师才打他1个师啊。
General Chen Cheng's army from September 11 managed to hold the defence lines south of the Yangtze River and west of Pengqing for another 40 days. During this period, there were many tragic stories, which were painful to deliver to the people.
日本人派了这个80辆战车，跑到我们这个碉堡上面，我们拿这个手榴弹啊，5个6个手榴弹，没有战车，没有震撼炮嘛，混起了个炸药。他的那个战车来哈，来压我们的当兵，一压连我们的人牺牲一个，他的战车也牺牲一架。就是那么干，没有炮，又没有什么，我们都是陆军，可怜了我们来时的武器呀。
From September 11, in 40 days, the Japanese troops actually only pushed forward 5 kilometres. The Chinese army survivors in this battle remembered those wounded men.
晚上啊，你听到这个士兵都在叫唤了，连长啊、排长啊，互相凶了，大家也没法子去啊，这个惨状啊，真是不堪忍睹。
我们那把那个杨文杰，你挂材料，一看好多的血哦。以后你赶快下去吧。我找个连长说，怎么样的？你赶快上营部里去，到营部里去，便宜的是伤兵啊。就是在这个时期，我这个步上前一朝，向上面跪下去，日本人走那边哒哒哒，一梭子这个轻机枪啊，你看这边这里就打到了。当时刘先生还不感觉怎么样，等一会儿就不行了，那就走不动了，远走边走不动。
那时候想那些伤兵啊哈，衣服裤子都剪光了，都给你一个被子盖到去，送到后方去了。那个时候还扯到师部了哈，扯一张商票啊。
俺把你挂了菜呀，给你个商票，你住院了，商票都发料了，打了呀。
这个商票才为正经的时候哈，委员长还考上10块了，你没得商票拿不到10块了。
我才解忧伤兵的，到都是夜晚的功夫了，到快要天亮的时候，礼宾飞机就要来了。那个时候我们此举的武器，这个交通工具很少啊。
这个上海有这个战士服务团呐，那都是大学生了，战士服务团就抢伤兵了。
那一天的时候啊，已经运走了几百个伤兵，现在还剩了有几十个人，几十个人已经车都没有了。那个时候我也没有办法的时候，可以讲。跟那几个伤兵的时候，不能走通的伤兵，不能运走，把他堵到那里，我也只好走了。我走，是才到这个地方的时候，我不能说了。
During the Battle of Shanghai, one might ask how high were the Chinese army casualties. The 88th Division, for example, their defence line was Zabei, so their casualty rate was less than others. The division commander, General Sun Yanliang, said in an interview,
我们以师的编制啊，相当有15000人那样子。那么最后到了南京呢，这个剩下不过1/3了。
头一仗这个旅战就走了，除了师长以外就是旅长，一个旅管2团呢，他都到前面去斗战，那么。都阵亡了，一样我们的牺牲。
The brigade commander killed in the first day of the battle was General Huang Meixing of 264th Brigade, 88th Division. He died at age 40. However, the Japanese situation was no better at the battleground of Shanghai. In October, the Japanese army almost exhausted their ammunition and could not get supplies to replenish it. They had to borrow ammunition from their army units in northern China. It was an unbelievable matter, especially happening to a well-trained Japanese army. On October 20, 1937, Japanese headquarters had been forced to make a decision. They moved 3 more divisions from northern China to reinforce Shanghai. The 3 divisions were from the Japanese 10th Corps, commanded by General Kushu. The three divisions were the 18th Division commanded by General Hiroyuki, 114th Division led by General Yoshi Inori, and 6th Division led by General Hisao Tani. From a strategic view, it was clear that the Japanese were forced to move their troops from northern China to reinforce the Battle of Shanghai, although the Chinese army suffered heavy casualties in this battle. But the Japanese axis of war from north to south had been changed to become the east to west. Therefore, it was a strategic success for the Chinese. On October 25, 1937, the Japanese used 150 aeroplanes to bomb Da Tung. Da Tung, located at the west of the Qian-Wan and north of Zhenru, and it was at the intersection of the Zhu-Ma-Tung Road and Hutai Road, an important area for the defence of Shanghai, and it was defended by the central government troops. The headquarter operational staff, Zhu Zeming, remembers.
他打我们大厂的就中央突破，那中央突破以后啊，他因为不能前进啊，前进两边还有部队也打他了，所以那时候我们大概是上午吧，我们总司令部和前面联络不上，觉得情况不对，就赶快派人上面去看，一看说这个他已经突破了。
A day later, on the 26th of October, the Japanese claimed that they had captured Da Tung and claimed they fought very hard to take Da Tung. This was the turning point, changed the whole situation in the Battle of Shanghai. Because of the fall of Da Tung, it made the defence of Zabei meaningless. Therefore, on 26 October, the Chinese army began to retreat. They left a small number of troops to cover their retreat. The majority of the troops retreated by following the Nanking-Shanghai railway line and along the Suzhou River. This gave rise to the famous story of the 800 heroes who stayed behind to cover the retreat. They were coming from the 524th Regiment of the 88th Division. They held a warehouse belonging to 4 Chinese banks as their last position.
这个八百壮士啊，完全是88师的52师团第一。
叫个谢晋元他当团副，他这个营要守四海仓库。 这掩护江湾这撤退的，江湾10几万部队啊，这日本人金三卫、杭州湾登陆强行偷渡了，把上海包围了。说这一天晚上，上海的部队整个沿着西梅路撤出来，叫这个营守这个四海仓库。
四行仓库就是我们的最后的一个阵地，与仓库同生是共患难，生是存亡的，有仓库就有我们。 四行孤军没有仓库就没有四行孤军，所以好了，我们就在接到这个命令呢，听到他这个训话嘛，是我们好了，没有哪一个人说是贪生怕死的，哎呀，逃跑的。
This warehouse belonged to 4 Chinese banks. The 4 banks were the Qin Chun Bank, the Yanye Bank, the Suong Lun Bank, and the Da Lu Bank. Because the warehouse was chosen as the last defence position of the Battle of Shanghai and defended by the men led by Xie Jinyan, it became a world-renowned place. The 524th Regiment of 88th Division fought against the Japanese from 27th October to the 30th for 4 days. They held firmly to their position on the warehouse bunker. Actually, the Japanese entered the warehouse 6 times, but all were repelled. Later, the British Authority considered the security of the international settlement, and on humanitarian grounds, they requested the defendants to retreat into their international settlement under the cover of British troops. But the Chinese defenders were betrayed by the British Authority. Once they entered the settlement, they had been promised safe passage to the area still held by the Chinese army. But due to pressure from the Japanese, the Chinese were forced to surrender their weapons and were held as prisoners of war for 4 years and 2 months until the Pacific War broke out. Now let's go back to the last moments of the Battle of Shanghai. On November 5, 1937, Japanese reinforcements, the Hiroyuki Division and the Hisao Tani Division landed at Jinsan Wei on Hangzhou Bay. On November 13, the 16th Division landed at Baimo Port and pushed forward in the direction of Changsou. It was a pincer movement to surround Shanghai. At this point, the Battle of Shanghai was decided. The Chinese army fought their way to retreat until November 13. Then the retreat from the battlefield was complete. The Battle of Shanghai was the largest battle during the 8-year war between China and Japan. The Chinese army threw in about 71 divisions and some local security forces, a total of about 750,000 men. On the Japanese side, they mobilised 9 divisions, plus other troops, a total of about 250,000 men. According to Japanese estimates, the fighting power of a Japanese battalion was equivalent to 1 Chinese division. But they later revised this evaluation to a ratio of 6-to-1. Certainly that evaluation did not include the additional firepower of the Air Force and the Navy. Therefore, with such a huge difference of fighting power, the Chinese army battled the Japanese in a narrow space for 3 months. This was never seen before in war history. For the casualty figures, the official records indicated that the Japanese suffered the loss of about 50,000 men, and the Chinese suffered 180,000 men lost, according to estimates made by General Sun Yuen-leung. Among these casualties, at least 28 regiment commanders were killed in action. Others, like the commander of 67th Corps, General Wu Ke-zhen, was killed while trying to break out of the Japanese encirclement, aged 43. The deputy commander of 175th Division, Xia Guocheng, was killed at the isolated city of Wuxing while covering the retreat of the main force, aged 43. On October 13, 1937, the first day of the Battle of Shanghai, the commander of 264th Brigade of 88th Division, General Huang Meixing, was killed in action, aged 40. Others include the 201st Brigade commander of 67th Division, General Chai Ping-yen, aged 35. The 519th Brigade commander of 173rd Division, General Peng Han-zen, aged 38. The commander of the 521st Brigade of 173rd Division, General Qin Lin, aged 37. The commander of the 174th Brigade of 58th Division, General Wu Ji-guang, aged 34. The deputy brigade commander of the 1st Brigade of the 1st Division, Yang Jie, aged 42. The 583rd Regiment commander of 98th Division, Liu Jingrong, aged 34. The regiment commander of the 176th Division, Xie Ding-sing, aged 36. The 193rd Regiment commander of the 33rd Division, Yung Ji-zu, aged 36. The 361st Regiment commander of the 63rd Division, Li Zung, aged 37. The 367th Regiment commander of 67 Division, Sung Kong-yi, aged 46. The 508th Regiment commander of the 170th Division, Xie Zhun, aged 29. At least 44 of the battalion commanders were killed in action, which included Yang Ziqing, who fought to his death at Baoshan City. There were numerous company commanders and platoon leaders unaccounted for. These people sacrificed their life to smash the lie claimed by the Japanese that they would conquer China in 3 months. And their sacrifice also provided the nation with 90 days to prepare for the war. In addition, their sacrifice had helped to turn the Japanese strategy of invading China from the axis of north-south into east-west. After that, the Japanese became passive, and they had to follow the Chinese steps in the progress of the war. Therefore, the loss of Shanghai did not mean that we had lost the war, but rather, it could be said that it was the first steps to win the war. Let our memory flash back 3 months ago. The Chinese troops had mobilised from all over the country and were sent into this battle. They were poorly equipped and poorly trained for the battle. But most of them had never seen aeroplanes and tanks before. They did not even know where the shelling was coming from. In the next 80 days, they just fought a hard battle, albeit without much knowledge of warfare. Now it was time for them to retreat, and they found themselves still alive. Due to the lack of communication and confusion with the situation and the breakdown in the supply, so the retreat was in great chaos.
下大雨。